Hello everyone, today we're going to be going over the entire math section from an official SHSAT practice test. This is from the SHSAT student handbook. The link to it is going to be in the description. This is the test that is made by the actual people, by the Department of Education. So it's the people who actually make the SHSAT. So it's the closest thing you'll ever find to the real test, right? This is more geared toward 8th grade students, but for 9th grade students it's also really good review for that 9th grade SHSAT. Right? So the way I'm going to be doing it is I'm going to show you all the way that I would do it. So rather than me explaining 5 questions for 30 minutes, it's just going to be me going through each question, with commentary. But generally, the way I do it is probably I'm going to be doing it in the most time efficient way. So that being said, we're going to go through all 57 questions, starting with 58. It asks us how many 5-digit numbers can be created using digits 2, 3, 5, and 7, and 8 without repeating any digits in that 5-digit number, right? So it's a combination and permutation question. We are just going to multiply 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, right? The first digit will have 5 possible numbers to choose from, right? Then we can't repeat digits, so the second number we only have 4 numbers to choose from. The third digit only 3, the fourth digit only 2, and finally the last digit we can only choose from 1 number, right? So 5 times 4 is 20, 20 times 3 is 60, 60 times 2 is 120, and 100 times 28 times 1 is just 120. Moving on to number 59, it asks us what is the value of x in the equation shown above, so we'll just cross multiply. Right? So 1 times 147 minus x is 147 minus x. And 12 times 12 is 147. Sorry, 144. So we'll add x on both sides. Right? If we add x, we add x. And we subtract 144 on both sides, we get 3 is equal to x. Or x is equal to 3. Right? Moving on to 60. This is an absolute value problem, so the way we do these is we just solve what's in the absolute value first. So the absolute value of negative 6 minus negative 5 plus 4.2. Remember to go from left to right, so first the thing we're going to do is we're going to find what negative 6 minus negative 5 is. Negative 6 minus negative 5 is negative 1, and negative 1 plus 4.2 is 3.2. Right, so we have the absolute value of 3.2 minus the absolute value of 3 minus 9.6. So we go from left to right. 3 minus 9.6 is negative 6.6. The absolute value of negative 6.6. Right, that's what we get. Absolute value of 3.2 is just 3.2. And minus the absolute value of negative 6.6 is just 6.6, right? Absolute value gets rid of this negative sign right here. So this is actually equal to negative 3.4. Alright, moving on to number 61, it says that Tyler completed 60 pages in his French workbook. This is 20% of the total pages in the book. How many pages are in the workbook, right? So we could just set up a system, or not a system, but just 2 related fractions. So we know that 60 pages is 20%, right? So 60 pages equal to 20%. That's 2 over 100. So if 60 is equal to 20, then x is equal to 100, right? So because we have that 20%, we can express that 20% as 20 over 100, and we could just write the corresponding values on the other side, and then we could just cross multiply to get x, right? So here cross multiply, we get 20x is equal to 60,000? No, 3 zeros, so just 6,000, right? Divide by 20 on both sides, and we get that x is equal to 300. Right, moving on to number 62, it says 4 straight lines intersect at point B. What is the value of y? Right? So we're just solving for this point right here, or not this point, but this angle, right? So we know that we have vertical angles right here. So we know that this 25 degrees makes that this 25 degrees, right? So just fill in the vertical angles. We know that this 30 means that there's 30 degrees here, and that this 60 means that there's 60 degrees here, and then that means that right here is y. We don't need that to solve this problem, but it's it's a good thing to know. So the only vertical angle we need in this problem is this 25 on this side. We know that the angle value of a straight line is 180 degrees. So we know that y plus 25 plus 30 plus 60 have to equal to 180 degrees, right? So in other words, 55 plus 60 plus y is equal to 180. 105 is equal to 180 y plus. So subtract 105 from both sides, and you're going to end up with y is equal to 65 degrees. Right, so that's the grid-ins done. We're now on the multiple choice problems, saying that if x equals 9, y equals negative 7, what is the value of this? So just plug in the values. So here we have 9 times 9 minus 2 times negative 7. Right, remember PEMDAS, parentheses first, so we're evaluating what's in the parentheses. Exponents, no exponents, multiplication, so we're multiplying negative 2, sorry, we're multiplying 2 by negative 7, which is negative 14. So here we have 9 minus negative 14 times 9, right, parentheses, we're still doing what's in the parentheses. 9 minus negative 14, what's that equal to? That's actually equal to 23, right? Same thing as saying 9 plus 14, and 23 times 9 is equal to 207. So moving on to number 64, it says that in figure of PQRS is a parallelogram, the measure of PT is 50, and the measure of angle PTQ is 70 degrees. What is the measure of QRS, right? So in a parallelogram, we're dealing with parallel lines, right? So these two lines are going to be parallel to one another, and these two lines are going to be parallel to one another, right? But we're just going to focus on the top and bottom, right? Generally, the rule for parallelograms is that angles opposite to one another are equal. So angle P is going to equal to angle R, really. And that's because they are, two parallel lines. If you extend these lines outwards, right, you're dealing with vertical angles. So these angles are going to be equal to one another, and then these angles are going to be equal to one another because, they're vertical angles, right? That's why. But generally, the only thing we need to know here is that this is equal to this, right? So if we solve for angle P, we solve for angle R. Right here, we know that we're dealing with a triangle, right? So we just need to solve for this angle to solve for that angle. All angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees, so 50 plus 70 plus x is equal to 180, 120 plus x is equal to 180, x is equal to 60. All right. Moving on to number 65, it says, based on the statements above, which variable has the greatest value, right? So which one of these has to be the biggest number? So we're just going to go in descending order. So starting off with m, it's saying, is m the greatest? Well, maybe that's not the best value to start off with, right? We don't know if m is the greatest yet. So let's start off with n, and n is a good number to start off with if we're unsure of m. Because right here, the first thing we look at is m is equal to 3n, right? And if m is equal to 3n, that means that n cannot be the greatest value, right? That means that m is actually greater than n, right? Think about it. If m is 6, right? 6 is equal to 3 times n. That means that n has to equal to 2, right? If m is equal to n plus n plus n, or n added to itself 3 times, that means that it's smaller than m, right? So now we're moving on to p, right? If we look here, this is all one line, right? So this is the same thing as saying that m is equal to p over 4, right? And that means that m cannot be our greatest value because m is equal to p divided by 4. Let's say that p was equal to 8. If p was equal to 8, 8 divided by 4, that would make m 2, right? So m is equal to a bigger number divided by another number, right? Because we're dealing with division, that means that m cannot be our greatest value. Plug in random values, you get that m is a small number, right? So now we're left choosing between p and between r. We know that in order for p over 4 to equal r, you need to you need to divide it by an even bigger number, right? So because m is equal to p over 4, right? M is also equal to r over 7. R over 7 is gonna have to be a much larger number because you're dividing it by a larger number to make it equal to m, right? So that means that r is biggest. And obviously, that's all you have to do there, right? And I could prove that to you. If m is equal to 2, that means that 2 is equal to p over 4. That means that p is equal to 8. But if m is equal to 2, that means that 2 is equal to r over 7, which means that r is equal to 14, right? So the bigger number you divide it by, that means the bigger number the numerator has to be in order for it to equal the same number as p over 4, right? So r is the biggest number there. 66 says that a roofing contractor uses shingles as a rate of 3 bundles for every 96 square feet of roof covered. At this rate, how many bundles of shingles will be needed in order to cover the roof that is 416 square feet, right? So we're dealing with bundles, so we know that there's 3 bundles for every 96 square feet. That means that there's 1 bundle for every 96 divided by 3 for every 32 square feet, right? So that's our ratio. So how many times? So all we have to do is just divide 416 by 32, and I'll just do that right now. That's 1, 32. Subtract these 2, you get 3. You get 11, you get 9, you get 6, and we know that this goes into that 3 times, right? So that means that 13 bundles have to contribute to 416 square feet, right? So set up the proportion and then make it equal to 13, or rather make it equal to 416. How do we get 416? We multiply both these values by 13. Whatever I do to one value inside of a ratio, I have to do to the other value inside of the ratio. To make party invitations, Marie could use a package paper of $10.50, or she could buy X individual sheets of paper for 15 cents each. What is the largest value of X that would make the individual sheets less expensive than buying the package, right? So the package is $10.50, and each sheet is 15 cents each, right? So what's the largest value of X that makes buying the individual sheets less expensive than the package? So we're looking for a value here of X that would make this smaller than 1050. We're looking for the largest value that makes this smaller than 1050, right? So let's look at the, let's just divide both sides by 0.15, right, to find which value actually gives us this number, and then we'll just subtract 1 from that value. If we divide 10.50 by 0.15, we get it to be 70, right? So when X is equal to 70, right, both of these are equal to one another, right? Because 0.15 times 70 is equal to 1050, right? Obviously, I'm not going to do all that division. That's just going to waste time, but yeah. So if at 70 sheets they're equal to one another, that means that at 69 sheets, this is still, whoa, I wrote this sign incorrectly. I'm so sorry. That means that this is actually still greater than it, right? At 669 is going to be the greatest value you can go to. Like I said, we're going to find the value that makes it equal to each other, and we're just going to find 1 less of that, or subtract 1. Here it's saying at 1 p.m. one day temperature was 8 degrees above 0. During the rest of the day, the temperature fell 3 degrees per hour. Was the temperature at 7 p.m.? So I'm just going to write it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So you could imagine p.m. after all of this. So at 1 p.m. we had 8 degrees above 0. So it was just 8 degrees. I'm so sorry if you can hear the people fighting in the back. I think there's a bar fight going on, but alright. But anyways, you know, these are all the times. So each hour that passes, we're gonna go down 3 degrees in temperature. So 8 minus 3 is 5, 5 minus 3 is 2, 2 minus 3 is negative 1, negative of 1 minus 3 is negative 4, negative 4 minus 3 is negative 7, and negative 7 minus 3 is negative 10. Moving on to number 67, it says a bag contains 75 marbles that are red, blue, or green. A ratio of red to blue marbles is 15 to 7, and the ratio of blue to green marbles is 7 to 3. If 2 blue marbles are removed and replaced with 2 green marbles, what will be the new ratio of red to green marbles, right? So we have a really special situation here, and this is a situation that's commonly tested on the SHSAT. So I guess it's not special, but it's something that you should know. Whenever you have a ratio of 3 things, right, as long, oh my god, they're really fighting outside, I'm so sorry, but you know, whenever the middle values of the whenever you have 3 ratios, it's going to be 2 things compared to another, and then another 2 things compared to one another, right? So whenever the middle values of this ratio, I always set it up like this, whenever the middle values of the ratio are the same, you can apply the outermost ratios equal to one another, right? So because these 2 7 values are here, I can say that the ratio of red to green is 15 to 3, right? Oops, wombat day. Sorry, didn't mean to click on that, but that's pretty much the rule here. So really, instead of writing this, and because these 2 middle values, that's the first rule. The second rule is because these 2 middle values are equal, I can just write this as such. 15 to 7 to 3. That's all I can do. And because I can write them all in one row, And because I know how many marbles there are in total, there's a trick on the SHSAT. You could just write x in front of these and set them equal to the total amount of items that are in the ratio. So here we actually have that 25x is equal to 75. So if you're confused, all we did was we just added x to each term in the ratio, and we equated it to the amount of marbles. So that means that x is equal to 3, right? So the ratio simplifies into 15 to 7 to 3, but in reality there are 3 of each, right? So in reality there's 45 red marbles, there are 21 blue marbles, and there are 9 green marbles, right? So that's all we had to do. So all we did was we just, added all these values up together and then solved for the thing that we need to scale this up by. We need to scale it up by 3, so here are actual values. Now, if 2 blue marbles are removed, so here our new ratio is 45 to 19, and if 2 blue marbles are removed and replaced with 2 green marbles, so we're adding 2 to 9, so it's 11. So what's the ratio of red to green? Well, red to green is going to be 45 to 11, which is choice D. Alright, moving on to number 70. It says that the table above shows the number of times that desserts were ordered at a restaurant. Based on this information, what is the probability of a customer ordering ice cream as dessert, right? So the probability is total things you can do. In this case, it'll be the total amount of times ordered over your part or the thing that you want to solve. So here we're going to have the total orders, and here it's going to be the part, which is going to be time ice cream order, right? The amount of times that ice cream was ordered, that's our part. So let's find the total. We find that by adding this together. So 23 plus 47, I think it's going to be 60. No, it's going to be 70. Awesome. So this is going to be 70. And here we have 42 plus 48. That's going to be 0, 1, 90. So these two are equal to 90. So 90 plus 70 is 160. So our denominator is 160. And the amount of people that ordered ice cream is 48. So here's our part over our whole. We have 48 over 160. We can divide by 8 on top and bottom because we needed a simplify this. We get 6 over 20, and we could just divide both these by 2 to get 3 over 10. 3 over 10 is equal to 0.30, which is equal to 30%. So F, right? All we did there was just simplify that fraction. What is the least common multiple of 26, 18, and 24, right? So what's the smallest number that all of these multiply into? It can't be 36 because 24 does not multiply into 36. It can't be 48 because 18 does not multiply into 48. The smallest number is actually 72. 6 times 12 is equal to 72. 18 times 4 is equal to 72. And 24 times 3 is equal to 72. So this is the smallest. That's the smallest number that they multiply into is all. One day, the early bird restaurant used 15 dozen eggs for 200 breakfast customers. At this rate, approximately how many dozen eggs are needed for 300 breakfast customers, right? So once again, I'm just going to set up two fractions, right? And this is the exact same thing I did for another problem. So, so if 15, I'm so sorry. I keep on getting, they're really fighting outside. I'm so sorry. But, if 15 dozen eggs contribute to 200 breakfast customers, then 300 X amount of X dozen eggs contribute to 300 customers. And this is perfectly legal for us to do as long as we combine customers with customers and eggs to eggs, right? So in other words, 15 contributes to 200 and X contributes to 300. All I have to do here is just cross multiply. So 15 times 300 is equal to 200 times X. So 4500 is equal to 200x. And then we just need to divide the 2. So 4500 divided by 200, that's 2. Here's 400. Subtract that, that's 0, 5. Carry down the 0. 200 goes into 500 another 2 times. And 1000, that's going to be 5. So it's going to be 22.5. Don't worry, it says that approximately how many. 22.5 is closest to 23 because you could just round up. Exterior 73, it says, a cooler contains 3 types of beverages, 5 bottles of apple juice, 3 bottles of grape juice, and 6 bottles of fruit punch. So what is the probability that a bottle chosen at random is not apple juice? So once again, it's part over whole. So our whole here is going to be the total amount of these juices. So 5 plus 3 plus 6, which is going to be what? 8 plus 6, it's going to be 14. So what is the probability that a bottle chosen is not apple juice? So our part here is going to be everything but apple juice. So it's going to be grape and fruit punch. So grape plus fruit punch excluding apple, right? So just grape and fruit punch. We're going to pretend apple doesn't exist, is 9. So the probability is 9 over 14. So sorry. I'm just going to go ahead and scroll down. Okay, so here we go. Moving on to number 74. It says a large circular dinner plate has a radius of 20 centimeters. I'm just going to go ahead and draw that right here. So a radius of 20 centimeters. A smaller circular plate with a circumference of 20 pi centimeters is placed in the center of the large dinner plate. So here we have a smaller plate that just placed down here conveniently. What is the area of the part of the large dinner plate that is not covered? So the smaller plate covers the larger plate, and we're just going to find the area around it, like the area that the small plate does not cover, right? So we know the radius of the big plate is 20, and we know that the circumference of the small plate is 20 pi. Know that the circumference is equal to 2r pi, right? So 20 is equal to 2r pi, right? So 20 is equal to 2r. Right, we just divide by pi on both sides. We divided by pi. And now we're just going to divide by 2. We know that r is equal to 10. Right, so the radius of the smaller plate is 10. Why are we solving for the radius? Because we're dealing with area, and the formula for the area of a circle is a is equal to pi r squared, right? So we had to use 2 formulas, formula 1, formula 2. Now what we have to do is just find the area of both of these plates. So the first area, our r is equal to 20. So a is equal to pi 20 squared. So a is equal to 400 pi. That's the bigger plate. And the smaller plate, a is equal to pi times 10 squared. So a is equal to 100 pi. And now we just have to subtract the areas in order to get the remaining space. So we have 400 pi minus 100 pi, which is equal to 300 pi. That's the answer. Moving on to number 75, it says the advertising table shows prices for newspaper advertising. Store purchase 1/4 page, 1/2 page, and full pages space in equal numbers for a total of 11.5k. What is the total amount of page space the store purchased, right? So the key word here is in equal numbers, right? So they bought in equal numbers of 1/4, 1/2, and full pages, right? And if they bought an equal number of this, that means that they paid the same amount, or rather they bought it the same amount of times, right? So they bought the 1/4 amount the same amount of times that they bought the 350 amount, and they bought this the same amount of times as they bought that, right? So what I can do here is I could just say 200x plus 350x plus 600x is equal to this number, right? Because if I bought them the same amount of times, if I say they bought each of these twice, that means I could do the same with their price, right? I could just multiply each one of these by 2, and I get the total price, right? If I bought the same amount of each items, I'm paying the same amount of times for each unit price, right? That's all I did here. So let's just add these numbers together. 600 plus 200 is 800x plus 350 is equal to 1150x, right? And this is equal to 11500. So we know that x is equal to 10. So they bought the 1/4 10 times, they bought the 1/2 10 times, and they bought the full page 10 times, right? Now they're asking us what is the total amount of page space, right? So if they bought 1/4 10 times, 1/4 is equal to 0.25, 1/2 is equal to 0.5, and the full page is equal to 1. So 0.25 times 10 is equal to 2.5, 0.5 times 10 is equal to 5, and 1 times 10 is equal to 10. So let's just add these numbers together. 10 plus 5 plus 2.5 is equal to 17.5, or 17 1/2. Moving on to number 76, it asks us for which point on the graph is the y-coordinate greater than the x-coordinate. So let's just go down through the list. Here r. So here the coordinate of r is negative 2, comma 2. So is the y-coordinate greater than the x-coordinate? Is 2 greater than negative 2? Yeah, so the answer is E. 77 says if 36 over y is equal to 4x, what is the value of x when y is equal to 3? So 36 divided by y is equal to 4x, right? So when y is equal to 3, 36 over 3 is equal to 4x. 36 divided by 3, we just plugged in 3 for y. So 36 divided by 3 is 12, and 12 is equal to 4x. So we're just continuing this equation up here. We just did this side. So if 12 is equal to 4x, divide by 4 on both sides, and we get that x is equal to 3. Moving on to 78, it says points x, y, and z are on a straight line, and y is between x and z. So here, I'll just draw our not-so-straight line right here. We know that y is between x and z, so x is here, y is here, and z is here. The length yz is 3/5 xy, right? So it's 3/5 xy. And we know that xy is 20 centimeters. So what is the length of xz? Okay, so if we know that xy is 3/5 xz, this is equal to 3/5 xy, just multiply 20 by 3/5, right? That's going to be 1, that's going to be 4, so then we know that this is 12 centimeters. We're asking for xz, which is the total length, so we'll just add 20 plus 12, which is going to be 32. Alright, moving on to 79, it says Brianna bought 1 3/4 yard of cloth at $8 per yard, 8% sales tax, total cost. So 1 3/4 is equal to 1.75. All we have to do is just multiply 8.00 by 1.75. I'll just write this in an easier way to multiply here. 1.75 times 8. That's 0, that's 4. That's 56. 56 plus 4 is 0, that's 6. And that's 14, right? And we just carry over the 2 decimal points. So this is $14. This is equal to $14, but there's an 8% sales tax. All this means is that we need to multiply this by 8 and then add that to 14. So here we have 14 times 8%. So 4 times 8 is 2. Here's 3. And that's 11, right? And then because this is 8%, this is actually 0.08. So here, 1.12 is our tax, and we just have to add this to 14. 14 plus 1.12 is 15.2, or 15.12. So here we have, on the number line above, mn is equal to 5 and 5/6. What is the position of point M, right? So if we know that the distance between these 2 points is 5 and 5/6, the way we get this, we just know that M plus 5 and 5/6 has to equal to 1 and 1/3. If we move 5 and 5/6 forward, we get 1 and 1/3. In other words, if we add 5 and 5/6, we get 1 and 1/3. So M is just equal to 1 and 1/3 minus 5 and 5/6, right? So 4 over 3 minus 35 over 6 minus 35 over 6 is equal to M, right? So let's find the lowest common denominator is 6, so multiply this by 2 over 2. And here we're left with 6. We're working up there, so 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 3 is 6, so 8 over 6 minus 35 over 6. This is equal to 35 minus 8, 1, 15, 7, 17 over 6, which is equal to, actually I feel like I did a problem wrong there. Oh, sorry, it's 27. 27 over 6, which is equal to, sorry, this is all negative. Negative 27 over 6 because it's a smaller number minus a bigger number, which is equal to 4 1/2, or 4 3/6. 81. A United States presidential coin is made from an alloy of 4 metals, copper, zinc, manganese, and nickel, with weights in the ratios of 177, 12, 7, 4, respectively. The coin weighs a total weight of 8 grams. What is the total weight of zinc in the coin? So a similar thing to what we did before, right? Because everything is in one line. This is copper, this is zinc, this is manganese, and this is nickel, right? Because everything in a straight line, and we know that this is all, that everything in total is equal to 8 grams. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add x to each of these terms, and I'm going to solve for x, right? They weigh a total of 8 grams, so let's do this. 7 plus 4 is 11x, and 11x plus 12x is going to be 23x, and 177 plus 23 is going to be equal to 200, right? So we have 200 is equal to 200x is equal to 8, so x is equal to 8 over 200, right? Now they're asking us for the total weight of zinc. So if zinc is equal to 12, all we have to do to find the total weight is just multiply 12 by x. Or we're just multiplying 12, whoa, big black screen there. Okay, anyways, we're multiplying 12 by 8 over 200. Awesome. So what is this going to be? We can just simplify this to 6 and simplify that into 100. So we have 48 over 100, which is equal to 0.48 grams. So Jack scored an average of 15 points per game, first 3 basketball games. In his 4th game, he scored 27 points. What is the average score for the first 4 games, right? So here we have 15 times 3, which gives us 45 points for the first 3 games. And then for the 4th game, he scored 27. So for this 45, we're going to add 27. This is 2, this is 1, this is 72, right? So his point average for all 4 games is 72. And the way we get the average is by getting the total and dividing it by the number of terms, right? So here our total is 72 points divided by the number of terms, which is just 4 games, and this is going to give us 18. I really don't understand why okay, here I hit fixed. So 83 says a cylindrical oil drum can hold 4,320 liters when completely full. Currently the drum is 1/3 full of oil. How many kiloliters of oil must be added in order to fill the drum completely? So if 1/3 of it is full already, 1/3 plus 2/3 is equal to 3 over 3, or a full drum. So in other words, we need to add 2/3 of the drum in order to make it full, right? So how many kiloliters of oil? Well, 2/3 of this thing, right? And the easiest way to find that is just to multiply this 4,320 liters by 2/3. That's how many kiloliters we're going to need, right? So here I'm just going to try to simplify terms. I'm going to divide 4,320 by 3. I'm going to get 1, 3 minus 1, 3. This goes in 4 times. 12 minus 0, 1, 2. This goes 4 times, and that. So here it simplifies to 1. Here it's 1440. And now I just have to multiply 1440 by 2. So here we get 0.882. So we get 2,880 is equal to 2/3, which is what we need to add. Now we're asking for kiloliters, so we're going to divide this by 1,000 because that's what kilo means, 1,000, and we're going to get 2.88. Nicole's age is now 3 times Carmen's age. Carmen will be 17 in 2 years. Well, how old was Nicole 5 years ago? Right, so Carmen will be 17. So C plus 2 is equal to 17, right? So we know that Nicole's age now is 3 times Carmen's age. So Nicole is equal to Carmen's age times 3. Boom, that's how we write it. N is equal to 3 times C. Now here it says that if Carmen will be 17 in 2 years, so Carmen now plus 2 extra years is equal to 17. Right, so here let's just solve for Carmen. So we're going to subtract 2 on both sides. We get C is equal to 15. We know that C is equal to 15, which means that Nicole's age is equal to 3 times 15, which is N is equal to 45. So 5 years ago, we're dialing the clock back 5 years. We're just going to subtract 5, and we get 40. So she was 40 years old 5 years ago. Chemical decays in such a way that the amount left at the end of each week is 20% less than the amount at the beginning of the same week. What is the percent of the original amount left over in 2 weeks, right? So let's say that we have 100 grams of this chemical, right? At the end of the first week, we're going to have 20% of it left. In other words, what's 20% of 100? 100 times 20% is going to be 80? Yeah, so 20% of it remains, right? So if 20% of it remains, 20% of 100 grams remaining is going to be 80 grams, right? Beautiful. How do we do that? We just multiply it by 0.02. Right? So if 80 grams remains, right, then we're going to have to find another 20% of it, right? Because this was 80 grams was after week 1. We're just going to have to find 20% of 80, right? So 80 times 20, 0.00016, right? So here we're going to end up subtracting 16 from 80. 80 minus 16 is equal to 64. right? So after the end of the second week, we're going to have 64 grams left. In other words, 64% is going to be left. That's all. Alright, so moving up to number 86, it says w minus 1 is an odd integer. Which one of these must be an even integer, right? So if we look at how numbers work, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Notice how they're saying integers. Integer is a non-negative number, and it's also non-zero. So the way the numbers work is it's going to start off with odd, then even, then odd, then even, odd, and so on and so forth, right? 1 is odd, 2 is even, 3 is odd, 4 is even, and it's just going to repeat in that pattern. Right? So if w minus 1 is an odd integer, that means that w has to be even, right? Because look, if here we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, if we're taking an even integer and we're going back 1 or we're subtracting 1, 2 minus 1 is 1, we're getting an odd, right? So in order for this to be true, w has to be even. So e is wrong because if we just add 1 to an even number, we're going to get an odd number, right? 2 plus 1 is 3. If we're just jumping 1 over, we're going to be odd. Now, 2w minus 1 is going to be the same thing. 2 times 2 is 4, and 4, we're just jumping 1 back to an odd number. And that leaves us with h as also an incorrect answer, because here 2 times 2 is 4, 4 plus 1 is 5, right? We're just jumping 1 forward, which is in front of us is also an odd number. So the answer here is 2w minus 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and 4, if minus 2 is 2, right? We're jumping 2 back to an even number. So that's all. So 3 students stand at the starting line of a running track, and they begin to run laps at the same time. Anne completes 1 lap every 2 minutes. So she completes 1 lap every 2 minutes. Jack completes 1 lap every 3 minutes, and Lee completes 1 lap every 4 minutes. Right? So how many laps does Anne does? How many laps does Anne complete before all 3 runners once again are at the starting line at the same time? So here we have a ratio of laps per time, right? And ratios can be expressed as fractions. So this is the same thing as saying 1/2, 1/3, and 1/4. So really, we're looking for a certain time, right, where they all start at the same time, right? And what that means is if we look at these fractions, right, if this is their laps and this is their times, right, whenever these are all equal to one another, we know that they're all at the same point, right? So that's all, right? Because laps, when you start a lap, you are at the beginning of that lap, right? So if, say, these were all over 8, or rather, if the denominators were all 8, that means that whatever the time is on top, it doesn't matter. Oh, sorry about that. I was looking at this the wrong way. The denominator is the time, right? So if they're all at the same place at the same time, if their times all match up, that means that they are at the beginning of the lap at the same time, right? So all we're doing here is we're just finding the lowest common denominator. Lowest common denominator is going to be 12, right? So how to get 12? We get 6 over 12 plus 4 over 12 plus 3 over 12, right? So they have all completely ran all these laps, and at the 12th minute, they are all now starting a new lap, right? At 12 minutes, they're all at the same point they used to be, is all that this is saying, right? So these fractions can be made into these fractions by multiplying each number by a special thing, right? In this case, all you have to do is just make the denominators equal to each other. At 12 minutes, because the time is equal for each one of them, they are going to be at the same position. They're all going to be at the same position at 12 minutes because the time is aligned, right? So if here we have time and here we have laps, it's saying how many laps does Anne complete before all 3 runners are once again at the starting line at the same time? Well, here it took her 6 laps for 12 minutes to pass and for everyone to be at the same point. 88 says simplify the expression. Pretty simple problem. 4 times 7 minus 3x minus 5 minus x, right? I don't know why I wrote that down, but whatever. Just expand. 4 times 7 is 28. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12x. negative 1 times 5 is minus 5, and negative 1 times negative x is plus x. So here we have we just have we just have 23, and here we have negative 11x. Choice F. Alright, moving on to 89. It says, Amy surveyed the students at her school about the number of pets they have. What is the probability that a student who participated in the survey has at least 2 pets, right? So what's the total here? Let's first find the total. 7 plus 5 is 12. 12 plus 12 is 24. 24 plus 16 is 40. So out of 40 total students, how many have at least 2 pets? What at least means was the smallest number they can have is 2, right? So if the smallest number is 2, we just eliminate 1 and 0, right? So the smallest number is 2, and anything greater than 2. So the smallest number is 2. So the smallest number of students who own 2 pets is going to be 7, and of course we're going to count 3 or more. So here we have 12 over 40, which is the same thing as what? Well, it's going to be the same thing as 3 over 10. If we just divide both sides by 4, you get 3 over 10. Moving on to number 90, it says a large container is partially filled with n liters of water. Ito adds 10 liters of water to the container, making it 60% full. If Ito adds 6 more liters of water, the container will be 75% full. What is the value of n? Right, so here we have n water, which is like current amount of water. What if I have m, which is the total amount? So n is the total amount that the tank can hold, right? It's a container. So let's just say that, let's just deal with 2 different variables, right? M is the total amount that we can hold, and n is the total is the amount that we're holding currently, right? So if we're currently holding n liters of water, and we add 10 liters to it, the container is now 60% full, so 0.6 m, right? Now if we add 6 more liters, so if we already added 10 and we added 6 more liters, we're adding 16, we are now 75% full, so 0.75 m, right? So let me just flip those two because it's going to be easier what we're doing. So here we have n plus 16 is equal to 0.75 m. So if we add 6 more, now 75% of the container is fully full. N plus 10, now 60% of the container is fully full. And that's represented by m. And right here I have 2 equations, and I could just subtract them from one another. N minus n is 0, 16 minus 10 is 6, and 0.75 minus 0.60 is just 0.15 m, right? So now we can solve for m by dividing by 0.15 on both sides, and we get that m is equal to 40, right? So the total amount of water that this container can hold is 40 liters, right? So what is the value of n? Well, we know that when n plus 16 is equal to 40 times 0.75, right? 0.75 times 40 is equal to 30. N plus 16 is equal to 30. Subtract 16 by both sides. And that means that n is equal to 14. Moving on to number 91. If x is equal to 10, what is the value of the expression above? Right, so if x is equal to 10, just plug in 10 for all these values. So 5 times 10 cubed plus 3 times 10 plus 9 plus 1 over 10 squared. So 5 times 1,000 plus 30 plus 9 plus 1 over 100. So 5,000 plus 30 plus 9 plus 0.01. This is an equivalent form. So here we have 5,039.01. So choice B. All we have to do there. So here we go, moving on to number 92. It says R, S, and T are midpoints of the sides of square M and Q above. What is the sum of the areas of the shaded triangles, right? So we know that RST is a square. So sorry, that M, N, P, Q is a square. We know that the sides of a square are always equal to one another. So this is 6, that this is 6, that this is 6. We know that R, S, and T are all midpoints. So that just means that the distance here is equal to the distance here equal to distance there. So if this is a midpoint, if R is the midpoint of MN, that means that on this side there are 3, on this side is 3. If S is a midpoint of NP, that means here is 3, here is 3. Remember that the area of a triangle is 1/2 BH, so 1/2 times 3 is 4.5, right? So this is our base, this is our height, or other way around, doesn't matter. So we know that this is 4.5, and we know this is 4.5. So what is the sum of the areas? It's going to be 9, because 4.5 plus 4.5 is 9. 93 says the Chins spend $5 of every $8 they earn on planned expenses. If the family earns $29,600 in 1 year, how much will they spend on planned expenses that year, right? So really, this is the same thing as saying that they spend 5/8 of their money, right? Don't believe me? Well, look. Let's say if they spend 5/8 of their money and they earned $8, how much are they spending? Well, they're spending $5. In other words, every $8 they earn, if they earned $8, they're spending $5. So if they earned $8 and they're spending $5, they're really just they're spending 5/8 of their total amount of money. So if they spend 5/8 and they earn $29,600, oh, my program is not responding. 1 second. It's going to freeze, and then it's going to unfreeze in like 5 seconds, and then it's going to write a bunch of things. Okay, beautiful. Called it. So 5/8, if they spend 5/8 of what they earn, and they earn $29,600, we could just multiply that to get how much they spend. So to divide by 8, just to simplify, so 2,900, divided by 8, this is going to be 3, 2, 4, minus 0. 0, 5, 6. This is going to be 7, and we get zeros, and we just add 2 zeros. So we know that this is equal to 3,700 times 5 over 1. So this times 5 is 0,05318, which is choice D. So here it's saying a pizza shop with 3 choices of 3 sizes, small, medium, or large, and 7 different toppings. Different pizzas can be created by changing the size and or the choice of toppings. If Cody wants to order a pizza with exactly 2 different toppings, how many different pizzas can create? Right, so there's 7 different toppings, and there's 3 types of sizes, right? So really, how many pizzas he can create is going to be the 3 sizes times the number of topping combos. Right, the number of the combinations, or the number of combinations you can make with these toppings, right? So if there's 7 different toppings, there's topping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's the type of toppings. There's toppings 1 through 7. So let's just draw the total amount of combinations. So you can have topping 1 and 2. You can have topping 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6, 1 and 7. And I skipped toppings 1 and 1 because he has to have exactly 2 different toppings, right? So that's all the toppings with 1. Now the toppings with 2, it's going to be 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2, and 7, right? Why did I skip 2 and 1? Because we already have 2 and 1 written here. So next topping is going to be 3 and 4, 3 and 5, 3 and 6, 3 and 7. Next is going to be 4 and 5, 4 and 6, 4 and 7. Next is going to be 5 and 6, 5 and 7. Next it's going to be 7 and 6. Right, and that's it. Those are all the possible combinations. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So there's 21 total combinations of toppings, and there's 3 different sizes. So we're going to have 21 combinations on a small pizza, 21 combinations on a medium pizza, and 21 combinations on a large pizza. 21 times 3 is 63. So that's 63 different combinations you can make. In the table above, it shows the number of cats per family in 100 households in Blaine neighborhood. By what percentage is the number of families with 1 cat greater than the number of families with 2 cats, right? So here it's 100 households, so everything here, this all adds up to 100. So the number of households with 1 cat is going to be 42 over 100, or 42%. And the number of households with 2 cats is going to be 35%, or 35 over 100. 42 minus 35. Going to be 7%. Is it going to be 7%? Let me just check my work. Yeah, it's going to be 7%, which is choice A. Number 96 is a wooden box with a square base. The height of the box is 3 times the length of one side of the base. Right, so let's just go ahead and draw that, right? So here's our box. And it says that the height of the box, so this value right here, is going to be 3 times the base. So if one side of the base is 3 feet long, what is the volume, right? So it's a square. So that means that if this is 3, that means that this is 3. And if the height is 3 times the base, and we know that the base is 3, 3 times 3 is 9. So here we have 9. Remember that volume is equal to LWH. So 9 times 3 times 3 is equal to 9 times 9, which is equal to 81. So that's our answer. Moving on to 97, it says on a bike trip, Rajiv traveled 65 kilometers in 5 hours, while Shai, I don't know how to pronounce that, traveled 72 kilometers in 4 hours. How much less was Rajiv's mean speed in kilometers per hour than Cheyenne?'s? So all they're asking us is to find their speed in kilometers per hours and subtract it, right? So how do we do that? Well, we're going to divide their kilometers by their hours. He traveled 65 kilometers over 5 hours. So that's a total of 65 miles over 5 miles. So that's an average of what? Well, 65 divided by 5, 1. 5 minus 3. That's just going to be 13. That feels wrong. Whatever, it's right. So 65 divided by 5 is 13, so that's 13 kilometers per hour. And with her, she did 72 in 4 hours, so same thing. 72 divided by 4 is going to be 18 kilometers per hour, so 18 minus 13 is equal to 5. So points P, Q, R, and S represent -3, -1, 0, and 2 respectively on a number line. How many units is the midpoint PQ from the midpoint RS? So let's just go ahead and draw this out. Here is 0. Here is 1, and here is 2. Here is -1, here's -2, and here's -3, right? So P is going to be at -3. Q is going to be on -1. R is going to be on 0. And S is going to be on 2. So how many units away is the midpoint of PQ? So the middle point from P and Q, that's going to be 2, right? It's in the middle, as you can see. Middle. How is PQ from the midpoint of RS? The midpoint of RS is going to be 1. It's in the middle. So how many units is -2 away from 1? It's going to be 3 units, because you need to do 1, 2, 3 jumps to get there. There are 1,000 cubic centimeters in 1 liter. And there are 1,000 cubic millimeters in 1 milliliter. How many cubic millimeters are there in 1,000 cubic centimeters, right? So we know that in 1,000 cubic centimeters, there's 1 liter of water, right? So 1 milliliter of water is, so how do we make this milliliter of water into 1 liter? Well, we multiply it by 1,000, right? So if we multiply both of these by 1,000, all of a sudden we have 1,000 millimeters cubed times 1,000 is equal to 1 liter, right? Now, what is also equal to 1 liter? Well, 1 liter is equal to 1,000 centimeters cubed, or cubic centimeters, right? So all we have to do is just make this milliliter into liters, and we already know what's equal to a liter, 1,000 cubic centimeters, right? So 1,000 times 1,000 is 1 million. So 1 million cubic millimeters is going to be equal to 1,000 cubic centimeters. I just put it in terms of liters. Moving on to 100, it says in the quarter circle above, what is y in terms of x, right? So the trap here is you're going to do Pythagorean theorem. Don't do that, right? Because we don't know what the height is. What we do know is that y plus 2 is the radius, and we know that x plus 1 is also the radius, and we know that the radius in a circle never changes. It's always going to be the same. How do we know it's a radius? Because we know that x plus 1 goes from the center to the end, and y plus 2, or y and 2, goes from the center to the end. So it's asking us what is y in terms of x, so just solve for y. Y is equal to x plus 1 minus 2, so y is equal to x minus 1. Moving on to 101, it says the hash marks and the number line above are evenly spaced. What is the coordinate of point R? So we know that the distance between all of these is going to be equal to one another, and we know that how many are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's 5 hash marks between it. So all we have to do is find the distance. Find the distance by adding the coordinates of both points. So what's 5 over 8 plus 1 over 4? That's 5 over 8 plus 2 over 8, which is 7 over 8, right? So the distance between here and here is going to be 7 over 8. Wonderful. So you just add 7 over 8, right? Now we know that these are all evenly spaced out, right? So 1, 2, 3. So we know that because these are all evenly spaced out and because there's 5 of them, MR is really just 3/5. MR is really just 3 out of the 5 jumps, 3 out of the 5 total jumps of MT, right? So I just want to find what? I want to find the coordinate of point R, right? So I want to find the distance between M and R, which is 3/5, the distance of M and T. So here I'm just multiplying 7 over 8 by 3 over 5, which is going to be 21 over 40. So that's the distance between M and R. So the distance between M and R is 21 over 40. In order to find point R, I'm just going to add 21 over 40 to negative 4 over 1, right? So here we have negative 10 over 40 plus 21 over 40. We get 11 over 40, positive 11 over 40, which is choice C. That's it. Moving on to number 102. It says, Fawn chose an internet service that charges $18 per month plus 0.024 per minute. Dion chose an internet service that charges $30 per month for unlimited usage. At the end of each month, Fawn and Dion's charges were identical. How many minutes did Dion use the internet? Right? So he just has $30 flat fee, so he doesn't pay anything per the minute. The other guy has an $18 flat fee, but he does pay this amount of money per the minute, right? And they're equal to one another. Right? So how many minutes do I need to be on call for these two, for this side to equal 30 and for this side to equal 30? So let's just solve for x. Subtract 18 from both sides. 30 minus 18, 2, 10, 2, 1. So that's $12 is equal to 0.024. Divide both sides by 0.024. You need, and that would get 500, right? 500 times 0.024 is equal to 12. Beautiful. Moving on to 103, it says, in a sample of 50 cars at a local dealership, 12 are red and 10 have backup cameras. Right, so here we have 50 cars. Right, here of them, 12 are red and 10 have backup cameras. Right? Of those 12 red cars, 4 have backup cameras. So here, 4 red cars and 4 of them have backups. Right? So instead of there just being 12 red cars and 10 camera cars, they're now actually just 6 cam cars because 4 of them are red, right? So whatever. So it says if a car is selected at random, given the sample, what is the probability that both of the following are true? So the car is not red and the car does not have a backup camera, right? So if there's 12 red cars, right, once again, there's probability, so it's part of a whole, right? So our part is going to be the number of cars that aren't red and don't have backup cameras. So how many cars aren't red? Well, we know that 12 cars are red, so 50 minus 12 gives us the amount of cars that aren't red, so that's going to be 38. So far, 38 cars are not red, right? But we're also asking for the cars that do not have a backup camera, right? So your first thing, well, we know that there's 10 cars with backup cameras, so you may want to subtract 10, but that's wrong, right? Because we knew that 4 of the red cars had backup cameras, right? So 4 of these 12, we don't know which ones, but we just know that in this 12, there are 4 cars that also have backup cameras. So really, instead of us having to subtract 10, we just have to subtract 6 because we already subtracted 4 of the camera cars out of there, right? So that those 4 cameras were a part of the 12 red that we already eliminated. So we just need to take out 6 more camera cars. So 38 minus 6 is just going to be 32. So 32 out of 50. Don't worry if it's not your answer choice. Simplify it. You get 16 over 25. Moving on to 104, it says, the decimal 0.06 can be written as a fraction x over 50. What is the value of x? Right, so x over 50 is equal to 0.06. Beautiful. Just rewrite this as a fraction. 0.06 is the same thing as saying 6 over 100. So we just cross multiply. So that's 100x is equal to 300. Right, x has to equal to 3. Wonderful. So moving on to number 105. It says the area of the shaded triangle, what is the area of the shaded triangle shown above, right? So we know the area is equal to 1/2 base height, right? So we know that the height is going to be 4, right? Because that's the distance from here to here, but we don't know the base, right? And we know the base, right, is going to either be this midpoint from here to here or from here to here. How do we calculate that? Well, we calculate that just by subtracting n from m, right? Don't believe me? Let me show you. Let's say that n was 2, right? This was 2, comma 0, and this was 4, comma 0. If I want to find the distance between these two, or if I want to find the base, how am I going to do that? I'm going to subtract the 2 from one another. I'm going to take n, and I'm going to subtract m, and I'm going to get 2. So I know that the base here is going to be 2. And then I can just multiply it by 4 to get my, and 1/2 to get my area, right? So all we have to do is just plug this into my formula, right? 1/2 times our base, which is going to be n minus m. Why am I not doing m minus n? Because that would give me a negative number, right? Times 4. Beautiful. That's going to give us choice C. Why did I do 2 on the outside? Because 4 times 1/2 is equal to 2, and 2 times m minus n. That's all. Remember that we're multiplying it by 1/2, so don't forget that. This would not give me anything, and this would just give me the distance of the base. Moving on to 106, it says, the card and the table above are mixed in a box. Which animal pictured in a card has exactly 1 in 4 chance of being picked at random from the box, right? So once again, probability part over whole, right? So first of all, we need to find our whole, so just add these up. So 4 plus 1 is 5, 5 plus 5 is 10, 10 plus 6 is 16, and 16 plus 18 is 24. So our whole is 24. So which one of these has a 1 in 4 chance? In other words, which one of these, if I put it as my numerator, simplifies into 1 over 4? Well, it's going to be 6. 6 over 24 is going to be 1 over 4, right? So if I have 6 dogs, which is our part, over our whole, which is 24, that simplifies into 1/4. So here we have which number line below shows the solution set for 2x minus 2 is less than or equal to y, which is greater than, 2x minus 2, which is, less than y, which is less than 4x plus 10. Beautiful. So, here's what we're going to do, right? We know that when it's y equals 1, so we're going to split this up into 2 different sides. Side number 1 is going to be 2x minus 2 is less than or equal to 1. And the second side is going to be 1 is greater than or equal to, actually I'm going to write it right next to it. Here we have 1 is less than or equal to 4x plus 10, right? So here I'm just going to solve for the x value. So here I just have to add 2 on both sides, and here I have 2x is less than or equal to 3. Divide by 2 on both sides, I get x is less than or equal to 3 over 2. Right? Here, on this side, I'm going to solve for x. I'm going to subtract 10 on both sides. I'm going to get negative 9 is less than or equal to 4x. I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. And I'm going to have that negative 9 over 4 is less than or equal to x. So, just to make it easier, I'm just going to convert this into decimals. This is 1.5, and this is negative 2.25. Right? So, our number line has to somehow show this, right? So it has to show that x is less than 1.5, right? So whatever here is shaded, it shows that value of x, right? So here it's showing that x has to be, negative 1.5. And between negative 1.5 and negative 2.75, right? So we want a number line that shades that the biggest point is going to be 1.5, and that's going to be choices C and choices D. Right here, it's saying that 1.5, and here it's saying 1.5. So the biggest our fraction can be is x is equal to 1.5. So it's either it's 1.5 or it's smaller than 1.5, right? All of these other ones, this one's saying that it has to be 2.25 or smaller, and this is negative 1.5 or smaller, right? Here, because we solved for x, we know that x has to be black screen again, x has to be 1.5 or smaller. These show that, right? So now we just have to match up the other part, which says that x has to be greater than negative 2.25, and that's just going to be choice C, right? This shows that x has to be greater than 2.25, so it can't go any lower than 2.25. That's all. This is wrong because it has an arrow, which means that x can be any point so long as it's not greater than 1.5. Here we have a lower limit, which means that x cannot be less than 2.25, right? So it can't just go on forever. It stops at 2.25, can't be any less. Lesson 108, it says in the equation above, what is the value of p? My favorite trick on the test, cross multiply. So here we have 14 times 7, so we have 14 times 7 is equal to p times 21. 14 times 7 is equal to 8, here's 2, here's 9, it's 98. 98 is equal to 21p. Here we have 98 divided by 21. Wonderful. So 98 over 21 is equal to 14 over 3. If we just divide by 7 on both sides, we get 21 over 3. Simplify the fraction always. And 109 says a ball is selected at random from a box that contains 7 black balls, 14 green balls, and 21 red balls. What is the probability that the ball selected is black? Remember, probability is equal to part over whole, right? So what's our whole? Our whole is going to be 7 black balls plus 14 green balls plus 21 red balls. So 21 plus 21 is going to be 42, right? That's the total amount of balls. Whole is going to be the total amount of balls. Now the probability is the thing that we're selecting for, right? So what's the probability that the black ball is selected? Well, if we're selecting the black ball and there's 7 black balls, that's just going to be 7. Our part is going to be 7. So we have 7 over 42. Divided by 7, we get 1/7. No, we do not get 1/7. We get 1/6 because 42 divided by 6. 42 divided by 7 is 6, so 1/6 is the answer. Well, 110 says North High School survey. Ask 2 questions, question A and question B. For each question, the students could either give yes or no answer. 800 of the students who responded to the survey, 720 answered yes to the question A, and 640 answered yes to question B. What is the least possible number of students who could have answered yes to both questions, right? So here we have a pool of 800 students, and 720 said yes to A, which means that 80 has to have said no to A. Why? Because 720 minus 800, that means that 80 people are remaining who said no, right? So that was question number 1. Then the same group of 800 people were asked another question, and of this group, 640 said yes, and 160 said no, right? Why? Because you subtract those two values together from one another, right? So what is the least possible number of students who could have answered yes to both questions, right? So we know that they have to say yes to A and they have to say yes to B, right? So if we think about it, these 80 people should not be in this 640 group. They should not be there. Because what could happen is these 720 people can say yes to A, but this 720 could be part of some of these 720 people could say no to B, right? So the thing that automatically disqualifies them is if they said no to A, right? Because if they said no to A, we're asking for the number of people who said yes to both questions. So we need to make sure that these 80 people do not end up in these 640 people that said yes. So in other words, we know that 640 people said yes to the second question. We know that 80 people said no to the first question. So in order to find the amount of people that said yes to both, subtract the amount of people who said no to one and yes to two. So 640 minus 80 is equal to 560. That's our answer. Moving on to the last page of the test. Can't believe we made it this far. It says that Raul is 3 years older than Vaughn. Which of the following inequalities gives the relationship between Raul's age and Vaughn's age? So Raul is at least 3 years older than Vaughn. So Raul has to be greater than or equal to Vaughn plus 3, right? At least. At the least, he's 3 years older. But in reality, he's much greater. So it's asking us which of the following inequalities gives the relationship between R and Vaughn's age. So this is true, but they just have it in a different formula or a different format. So in order to make it in this format, all we have to do is just subtract v from both sides. So r minus v has to be greater than or equal to 3. That's choice A. All we did here was we wrote our own formula and then we just adapted it to their form. So 122 is asking us, using the conversion above, how many adults are equal to 1 Rick? So here I'm just going to write it out. Rick sinned adult, right? This is the same thing as one of these stupid 3 ratios. We know that 5.6 Ricks is equal to 1 sinned, and that 1 sinned is equal to 12.88 adults, right? This is the same thing as this, just reformatted differently. And remember, because we have 1 in the middle, we can just combine this into one linear thing. right? So Rick and Dalt and Sind, right? So that means that these are all the same thing, right? This also means that 5.6 Ricks, because there's something in the middle, and because it's all in one line, I can say that this ratio is equal to this ratio, right? Or those two ratios have to be true, the same way that these two are true, and the same way that these two are true. So all I'm doing is I know that this is the ratio from this to this is the same thing. I'm just writing it without the 1, right? So we know that 5.6 Ricks is equal to 12.88 Dalts, right? So all we have to do here is just make this into 1 Rick. How do we make this into 1 Rick? Well, we divide it by 5.6. 5.6 divided by 5.6 is 1, and 12.88 divided by 5.6 is, well, if we think about it, 5.6 has, if you multiply 5.6 times 2, you get 2, 1, 1, 1.2. So it has to be close to 2, and the value closest to 2 is f, right? So all we did here was we just put Ricks and Dalts equal to one another, right? Or we found the proportion for Ricks to Dalts because of this magic 1 in between value. Moving on to 113, it says that there are now X cans stacked on a shelf that can hold 36 cans while full. If 4 of these cans were removed, the shelf would be half full. What is the value of X, right? So we know that there are X cans right now. And if we remove 4 of these cans, the shelf would be half full. We know that the full shelf can hold 36 cans. So what's half of 36? It's 18. So if we take 4 away from this magic number, we get half of the total amount of cans that we can hold, right? It's half full. Fully, we can hold 36, but it's half full, so it's half of that, which is 18. So we can add 4 on both sides, and X is equal to 22. Choice D. Wonderful. So now 114, last question. It says Carlos tossed a paper cup in the air 50 times and found that the probability of it landing on its side was 72%. If he tosses the cup in the air 150 more times, what is the total number of times he can expect it to land on his side? So he can expect it to land on its side 72% of the times, right? Percent of times, right? But I need how many times, right? So in order to find the actual value, I'm just going to need to multiply the amount of times by 72%, right? So he already flipped it 50 times, and then he flipped it 150 more times, right? So really, he flipped it 200 times in total, because it's 150 in addition to the 50 original ones. So we just have to find 72% of 200, or just 72 times 200. 0.72 times 200, which is 144. Right, so that's all 57 questions for this test section completed. Closest thing you can find to the real deal 8th grade SHSAT. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, have a great night. Hope you learned something, and feel free to subscribe.